No, go ahead.
If you've done any history on the property or read anything or seen any of the shows, a guy named Herb Baumeister lived here from 1991 to 1996. And during this time, young gay men continued to disappear and had been disappearing from gay bars in downtown Indianapolis. Eventually, the gay community put enough pressure on the Indianapolis Police Department to try to investigate what was going on. And they went to the gay community, or the gay community had gone to the police, and they said, look, we need help. Does anyone know anything? And one guy raised his hand and said, there's a guy in Hamilton County, which is not from around here, this is where we are, strangling people. They said, great, where does he live? Well, the guy that had been here, Herb had let one guy go, and this guy said, I was only there once, it was at night, I saw a sign, it said something farm, and it's up where, he describes it as where rich people live. He was from the inner city, and he doesn't come up this way. So anyway, that really wasn't enough to go on. They said, well, if he ever comes in the bar again, get his license number. And Herb, the alleged killer, we have to say alleged because all of this is it's not proven. The police will tell you this is who did it. So anyway, the alleged killer named Herb came back into the bars. They got his license number. He came back to this address. At this point, they go to him. The police go to Herb at one of his businesses here on the north side and said, we want to search your property. We think you're involved with these disappearances. He said, no way. Talk to my lawyer. So eventually they went to his wife. In the winter of '94, his son had found a complete skeleton in the backyard. The son showed it to his mother showed it to Herb. He very quickly dismissed it as his father's anatomical skeleton from his medical practice. Herb apparently was a pack rat. He collected everything. His house was stacked to the rafters with stuff, and it was not out of his character to have something like that. The police told me later that there was a skeleton in the garage, an anatomical skeleton, it just wasn't the one that was in the backyard. So when they go to his wife and they tell her that they believe he's involved with these murders, she very quickly said, this is ridiculous. I've been married to him for 25 years. We have 3 children. He's never so much as put a bruise on me accidentally, and you're telling me he kills people? It just didn't add up. She said, get proof. Well, they didn't have it. So more time goes by, and unfortunately more people disappear. In the summer of '96, she had filed for divorce in the subsequent year. Herb was still living here, but he was living in the apartment upstairs, which we'll see. Herb went away with his son up to, they had a lake condo north of here at Lake Wawasee. And while he was up there with his son, she calls her lawyer and says, I want to talk to the police. Police come out. They said, she tells them, look, I found a skeleton in '94. They said, show us where you found it. She takes them out back to a spot in the woods, and she said, this is where it was. And of course they start looking around, and there are bones everywhere. So immediately she says, go get my son. So the Hamilton County Sheriff, it's now a Hamilton County issue, not Indianapolis any longer, because remains are found here, go up there to Wawasee, collect the son, and don't ask her any questions about anything. And of course people ask, why didn't they just grab him then? And I was told that they just didn't know what they had. This could have been an Indian burial ground, was their exact words. So, and there was a real, there was just such a hesitance to believe that this could be happening up here in a nice part of town. So they go up, collect his son, and bring him back. In the meantime, one of the detectives that was here had a girlfriend who worked for a local news station. She blabbed it to the media. Herb sees it on television. They're finding bones on an estate in Hamilton County. He drives to Canada and kills himself. At this point, they start trying to sift through the woods and find what they can. And they spent about a week behind the house in an area that the police and the anthropologists termed a burn pile. And in that burn pile, most of the remains they found were an inch or less, and they had been burned. And they did find some teeth. they spent a week in that spot. Herb's dead at this point, killed himself in Canada. They were literally packing up after being here a week, and one of the kids from the farm next door, this was all farmland, horse farm back then, and the kid said, "What are you guys looking for?" And they said, "Well, this is a crime scene, we're looking for human remains." They said, "Like bones?" And they said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, all the bones are over in the creek." So there were two spots on the property that he was disposing of the bodies. The first spot, this is all a theory, but it's a pretty good one. Over at the west side of the property near the western fence was what they call a mulch pile. He would put the bodies in the mulch pile, cover them up with everything from the farm, from clippings, leaves, limbs. After a while, these serial killers, at least according to the FBI, get very cocky. They've been getting away with it for a long time. He starts putting the bodies closer and closer to the house, to within 50 feet off the back of the house, which is the skeleton that the son had found. So they spent another 3 weeks in the creek. The creek is actually not on our property. The animals had drugged these remains all over. They estimate they only got 50%. We still find them to this day. So as far as the number here, the official number is 11. They know that there's at least 11 that were here because they found 11 of these first left metacarpal bones, so there was at least 11 left hands. The anthropologist told me that if he wanted his opinion, he said the amount here is probably somewhere between 17 and 20. They identified 8, but the people that Herb was killing were not, they were transients, drifters, they didn't have any ties to the city. So there's nobody coming forth with the DNA sample. So you have to have a DNA sample to test against your bones. So if you had a missing relative, you would take your DNA and say, "Here, test my DNA against your bones." Well, unfortunately, nobody's coming forth. So there's quite a few that remain unidentified. They do believe he was what's known as the I-70 killer. From 1980 to 1991, all these guys were found dead between here and Columbus, Ohio. They were all from the gay community in Indianapolis, and they were all strangled. Well, all of that stopped in 1991, which coincides when they moved here. So the theory is he now had a place to dump them. He would go down to the bars and promise the guys a swim in the indoor pool. So the pool was kind of the lure. And these guys came willingly. He wasn't, bashing everybody over the head and dragging them up here. Everybody came willingly. So that's very quickly the history of the case.
You got that down by heart now.
Yeah, it's a whole lot. So we were looking for a place for horses. We've always had horses. We came across it in a multiple listing in an ad, and we thought we'd go look at it. So when we first got here, the gate which you came through was chained shut. The grass was 4 feet tall, and you get down to the house, and there's clearly no one living here, and probably hadn't been for a while. We found about 5 years. So the first question you have to ask yourself: does it bother you enough to live here? It obviously didn't because we moved in, but the other thing is of course the upkeep. It's a lot to keep up. So that was the real deterrent, the realtor said. It wasn't the history as much as just the upkeep of trying to take care of 20 acres and all this grass and this house and all that stuff. So we moved in, fairly quiet for about a year, and then things started happening.
What?
This is Joe. If any of you've seen any of the videos, TV shows, that's Joe. Really, the stuff didn't start happening until Joe got here.
Technically, it was 2 weeks before, according to Vicky.
Okay, so I'll tell you
Not my fault.
kind of some of the things that happened. So the first thing that happened was I was on the backside of the house painting, and I was up on the ladder, and my wife hollers up to me and says, there's a man in the woods in a red shirt. Now, we keep that gate shut 24 hours a day, but it's open because you were coming. So, but back then, when we first got here, we did not. So I thought it was another, what they call looky-loos. Hollywood, they call them looky-loos. Driving by the movie star's house. So a lot of people know about this property, so these people would come down the drive just to look around. So I thought it was another one of those people. So I get down off the ladder and I said, well, okay, where is he? And she said, well, he's gone. I said, well, where did he go? She said, well, I didn't tell you, but it's the second time I've seen it. And I said, saw what? And she points to these trees and she said, a guy walking away in a red shirt, a Marine style crew haircut is the way she described it, very short, and he was walked literally into the trees and disappeared, but he had no legs. She said he was see-through.
Below his brainer.
Yeah, below the waist. So, you know, I made a joke or something.
So this is how Rob tells me about this, okay? I had been out the night before, maybe with some friends out late, whatever. But so he wakes me about noon. It's kind of a late day on Sunday. He's knocking on the door. Hey, put on a red shirt and run through the woods. So I'm thinking, no, wait a minute. Somebody just got their kids a new paintball gun, slingshot, water cannon, something's up. You wouldn't tell me why. So I'm thinking, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm a target for something here. So I said, you know, I'm not going to do it right. Come on, just do it. And I kind of find out I don't have a red t-shirt, so I used one of his son's, Michael's shirts.
Yeah.
Like that. So I put on a red shirt. So I said, Rob, if you tell me why
I
I put
just
on
want
a
to
red
mess
shirt.
with her. I just want to mess with you.
Yeah. So I put on a red shirt and tells me why, and I'm like, well, she told me that half an hour ago I would have done it. So we run out in the woods, and Jake was like, oh, that's not fun. But anyway, I see the same thing later in the week, 4 or 5 days,
All right, well,
4
we're
days
not
later. But,
More than.
yeah. So time goes by. That was in, say, August of August of 2008, something like that. So I think it was Joe again got on the internet and found a paranormal group had come to this house a year before we moved in, unbeknownst to the owner, and the house was empty. But there was a caretaker here, a guy named Crazy Dave. I call him Crazy Dave, but he would kind of keep track of things. Not very good. Anyway, so. The guy, there was a number associated with it, so I called the guy and I said, look, hey, we own the place now. I said, did you find anything while you were here? And he says, well, yeah, that's one of the most haunted houses in Indiana. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, haven't you seen anything? And I said, I haven't. I said, my wife saw something. And on the phone, he says, let me tell you what she saw and where she saw it. He said, if you look out your master bathroom window to the west side of the property, there's a group of 3 trees. She saw a guy in a red shirt with no legs. Exactly. And at that point he offers, he said, look, we would love to come out there and do a full investigation for you, no cost, blah, 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 confidential. And at that time I said no. We had sort of decided when we made this purchase that we would just kind of forget about it because it's what's known as a stigmatized property, psychologically impacted, it's hurt the value. So we thought, well, we just want to not talk about this anymore and you know, the value will go up and we'll all walk off in the sunset. But stuff just kept happening. So the next thing that happens is this guy, that was in August of 8, he calls me in January and says, look, I've got a paranormal conference here in town. I got people from the History Channel, the Travel Channel, the Sci-Fi Channel, and we would love to come out and do an investigation for you, but it's got to be this week. And I said, I don't know, I just agreed to it. I said, okay, fine. Well, Vicki, my wife, had gone to this medical conference out in Colorado. She was not here. I called her on Thursday. I said, hey, the Ghostbusters are coming out on Saturday. You'll be back. And at that point on the phone, she tells me, good, maybe they'll pick up on what I picked up on. And once again, I have to ask what she's talking about. She said, well, we've been married 34 years. She doesn't have to tell me. She said, well, there's a place in the house I don't like to go. I said, where? And at that point, she said, well, I don't want to tell you because you'll tell them. So I said, I finally convinced her to tell me. She said, your bathroom in front of the closet. I said, what's wrong? She said, I just don't like it. The hair stands on the back of my neck. It's like a brick wall. She said, just something tells me I shouldn't be in there. I said, okay. So these people come out following Saturday, and they bring all this equipment. And I recognize some of them from some TV shows. And now supposedly they don't know where they are. And they were told they're just going to a surprise investigation, and I was not allowed to tell them anything like they've told you. So they brought 3 psychics. I never talked to a psychic in my life before any of this. So there's a woman psych standing about where you are, and she points to the top of the stairs and said there's a male spirit standing at the top of the stairs, just glaring at me. He's very unhappy that we're here. Of course, I can't see it. So she has a son. She brought her son, who was about 18, and he had seen and heard spirits since he was 2. And she said, or he said, and he was standing about where you were. He motions to the west side of the house, which is that way. He said, there's a room, the exact way he said it was, there's a room in this house for a man that I want to see. My bathroom, essentially. So, to sum all this up, just so you don't stand here all night, is my bathroom is, some people don't like it. So the next week, while I was there, while they were all here, I talked to one of the investigators that I thought was a little more on the level. These other people were very dramatic. They told me things that I already knew. They told me things that are on the internet. They told me things that are in books. So I just didn't buy it. It was a little corny for me. So I called the one investigator and I said, do you know a psychic that that could come up here that maybe doesn't know the story? And she said, yeah, I think there's a lady in Mooresville, Indiana, which is a little south of here, that wouldn't know the story. So I said, well, you're going to have to bring her up, because if you Google the address, it all comes up. So she brought her up following Saturday, and her name was Myrna. She came to the house here at the front door, and she said, what do you want me to do? And she was probably in her 60s, jet black, American Indian maybe. And I said, just walk around. So she walked around for about 20 minutes in the house and didn't say much. And she said, I'm drawn to the backyard. I said, okay. So she walks around the back of the house, walks to a spot which we termed, and the police termed, the burn pile. It just looks like woods now. It's been so long. It's just green. It's green like everything else. And she stood there for about 5 minutes and said, I see fire. Not that you're going to have a fire. The fire has already happened. And then she said, I feel people are buried here. And I didn't say yes or no either way. I said, okay, fine. And she came back in the house. I said, Myrna, what's going on here? And she said, well, there's at least 4 spirits in the house. And she said, people were killed here, a lot of people. And she said that they were killed, obviously, by somebody, and that they were trapped here. And I said, well, help them. And she said, well, I can't. She said that, eventually they might move on, but she essentially told me she could not help them. So, and then she went on and said, your bathroom. And I said, what's wrong with my bathroom? You don't like it, my wife doesn't like it. What do you do? She said, your bathroom's a portal. And of course I have to ask what that is. She said, a portal is an area in the house where the spirits transition from this world where we are to where they're stuck. She said, sometimes people that die violently don't know they're dead, and they don't know to go to the light. This explanation has been told to me many, many times by many, many different psychics. So, that's the bathroom. The other things that happen here, a lot of it is what I've been told, but some things we do hear and see. The most prominent thing is the door knocking on the apartment. I think it started when Joe moved into that apartment. It's above the garage. We call it the in-law quarters. My 22-year-old lives up there when he's not at school now, but the knocking still goes on. It's always 7 times. It's always very late in the night, and Joe had it happen, what, 35?
35 times.
Yeah. So there's a heavy horse head door knocker, and the door knocker, it's very, very insistent, and it's very loud. That happens. Some things on a shelf in the downstairs bathroom get moved from one end to the other. If you sweep sometimes, they pull the sweeper out of the wall, the cord out of the wall. And then, of course, the evidence that others have caught. I'm not a ghost person. I'm not sensitive. I'm a skeptic. But the 2 things I told you about, my wife, the guy telling me about a guy in a red shirt, and these other people telling me about a red shirt, and then the bathroom. I can't explain it.
Now, you had 2 things happen in the pump room.
Okay, well, in the pool room, where the theory is that most of the guys were killed, there's a book called the pump room, which is an area where the pool pump is. I was touched on the elbow. I felt something rub me on the elbow, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dark. It was shadow or something. I never saw it straight on. So stuff happens that we just can't.
You want to tell me a story about the guy who murdered his daughter?
Okay, so at work we had a guy come from the West Coast, and he came up to me and said one day, he said, "I heard you have a house with spirits." And I said, "That's what they tell me." And he says, "Well, I've seen and heard them since I was very, very young, but he says, my 4-year-old daughter is starting to say things now. Can I bring her up?" So he came up on a Sunday with her, and she was 4 years old at this time. She just walked around. She didn't say much. We went down to the pool room, and we got to the entryway of the pump room, and I said, "It's okay, you can go in there." And she said, no, I can't." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because there are people sleeping in there." Now this little 4-year-old, she doesn't have an axe to grind. I'm assuming no one told her anything, so that was pretty interesting. Any questions about anything? About the case? You all need to get on Amazon and buy my book.
Oh, yeah, it's coming out.
What's pre-order?
Shameless plug.
Pre-order. You can pre-order it on Amazon.
Yeah.
The Horrors of Fox Hollow.
When's it coming out?
September 8th. September 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I just did the factual part of the case. Another guy, Richard Estep from Colorado, he's written 7 or 8 books on it.
Today is his birthday, by the way.
Oh, it
Oh, it's
is?
Richard's birthday.
He co-wrote, he did all of the paranormal stuff. He came and spent about 6 days here, and he wrote the, I'm less concerned about that, more about the case. There's a lot of bad information out there, so I try to keep it all straight.
I have a question. Did they ever find any skulls?
Yeah, no. Okay, so the skull story. So out of all the bones,
Sweater there.
all of the bones, out of all the bones that they found, and there were over 5,500 bones and bone fragments, they only found about 6% that were actual cranial fragments. So the theory is that after his son found that skeleton, he now realizes someone has seen something, so he went through the woods, picked up the skulls, and hid them somewhere. I think he believed that the other bones he could very easily dismiss as animal bones. But a human skull, it's pretty hard to convince somebody it's not, it's a deer or something like that. So that is a true story.
Is there ever a videotape room that you've ever found, or somewhere where there's a theory he videotaped a lot of it?
Okay, that's another part of the story. So Mark, I said his name. The guy that got away.
Edit.
His name is not Mark.
Tony Harris.
Tony Harris.
Sounds like.
Tony Harris. So,
Sounds like Mark.
And I'm sorry, we don't try not to make light of this, but so much of this stuff is just crazy. So Mark has come back into our lives here in the last 5 years. I got a call from a detective down a detective that was hired by some of the families to find their kids, and Mark fed him leads for years. And he said, "Can Mark come back up?" So I said, "Sure." So Mark came back up. Mark's got his life together now, and he told us a really different story. But he said Herb was a prolific videographer. He said he videotaped everything, and he said he videotaped these killings. This was Mark said. Now Mark supposedly was only here one time, so I don't know how he knew that. But so when the police got here, he had told the police that, yeah, he videotapes everything. They said, let me, does he have videotapes to his wife? He said, yeah, he videotapes everything. They went down to a shelf in the basement where he kept all his videos, and the shelf was empty. So when he got to Canada, as he was fleeing the country, he stopped the night before he killed himself under a bridge, and a Canadian mounted police, he was asleep, knocked on the window and said, "Hey, you can't park here, it's not safe." She shined her light in the back of the car, and it was full of videotapes. When our law enforcement got up there to collect him and the car was empty, completely empty. So if he did videotape it, he took them with him. Let's see what else.
You still have the pool hose?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Herb was into something called erotic asphyxia, and the FBI told me the goal was probably never to kill anyone, but during one of these erotic asphyxia events, someone died, and after that it became a compulsion or a habit, and he knew after that if he did it, you were probably going to die. Mark, Tony Harris told me,
I would.
he doesn't like to be, he won't even be photographed. So he said that he allowed Herb to do this to him, but he faked passing out to I guess see Herb's reaction. So when he came back to life in the pool, Herb was very, very shocked. And at that point, Tony pointed to him and says, "You're hurting people, I'm gonna go to the authorities." And Herb looked right at him and told him, "No one's gonna believe anyone like you." And unfortunately, he was correct. Tony, at the time, you know, he didn't make a very good witness. Let's say his lifestyle was such that just wasn't very credible.
He still wouldn't make a good witness.
Well,
No.
Yeah, we met him last time. He was
Yeah. So,
interesting character.
yeah. Now, the reason they didn't grab her immediately was, after they're finding bodies in his backyard, was that in Indiana, there was undoubtedly, his lawyers would have asked for a speedy trial, which is 70 days. The police told me, we didn't have anything. All we had was Tony and some bones. And the prosecutor for this county was standing in the backyard. She said, hold it, this could be an Indian burial ground for all we know. So after the anthropologist got here, it was very quickly, he said, no, these are fresh, and this is not an Indian burial ground, and this is no one's toy skeleton. So at that point,
Those were real.
those are so anyway, that's why he was never really questioned about it, other than the police going and asking them to search. They told me if he walked in this door right now, there's not a thing they could do. There's just, it's all circumstantial. Yeah, the bodies are in the backyard. I didn't put them there. That's all they have to say. It's just, and maybe nowadays with better DNA and forensics, they could pin it on him. But unfortunately, at that time, they couldn't. So anyway, anything else?
What did William do to his hair?
I've got a couple of things before Rob walks you around and shows you the place. One is you hear them whining in the kitchen.
We'll quiet him.
That's Winston.
That's
So if
Doug.
you go in the kitchen, say hello. He's very friendly.
He'll
He'll
quiet.
be in there all night, and he loves pets.
It's a basset hound.
The second thing is, before you leave tonight, will you please check in with me so I know you're gone, because I don't like walking through a haunted freaking house by myself looking for people. And the third thing is, this is going to be weird to people who are not into this, but I had a dream last night, and it was a very real dream. Sometimes people come to me in visitation, and those are really, really vivid. So I had a dream like that, but I wasn't sure if it was the peanut butter jelly sandwich I had before I went to bed last night that was talking to me, or if it was a visitation. But in the visitation, there was a tall, scruffy-looking guy that was skinny, and he had like a beard, and he was wearing an olive green, like old army jacket, right? So there was him and this lady who warned me. It wasn't even here that I was coming; it was somewhere else. He was like, she was like, "Be careful when you park, because where you park used to be a place for prostitution and hookups. So be careful; it's sketchy." And I'm like, "Okay." So then we get to that place, and it turned into an apartment building. And I turned around and looked, and this big, tall, scruffy guy walks through my door, and I'm like, "Who are you?" And he goes, he just shakes his head, and I go, "We don't want what you're here for. You need to go." Because I thought he was there for sex. And he goes, "No, that's
Gave
not."
that up.
Yeah, yeah, for Lent. He goes, "That's not what I'm here for." He goes, "I want to go with you on your investigation." And I'm like, "You can't. It's booked. It's already completely booked." I said, "So I don't think we have room for you. You need to leave." And he goes, "I'm not leaving." And he went out in the hallway and leaned against the wall. And I wasn't threatened by him, but there was something creepy about him, and he wouldn't leave. So I put all this on Facebook this morning, and one of my psychic friends who was here that night that you were talking about, and he had dreams about her for a month after he was here. But he called me this morning, and he goes, "We gotta talk." He goes, "That wasn't a victim, that was her." And I go, "But this guy was tall." And he goes, "I don't care. He was doing that to trick you. That was her. He wants me to tell you," because he said, you're complacent there, because I'm like, nothing happens to me. Things happen around me, but nothing happens to me because I'm female, Herb, or whoever it is, goes after men. So he wants all of you, if you would, to protect yourself before you do this. Because if you're here just to see the house and oh, this is just a fun thing we're doing, fine. But if you're a true investigator, please protect yourself. And that's all. And if you don't know how to do that or you want me to do it with you, I'm happy to do that. I'm just gonna leave it right there. So there's your creepy, weird tour guide factor. Okay.
So we obviously live here. The house was built in 1977 by not Herb, another family, and they liked horses too. So I'll show you around, and then you can. I think you're free.
I do have one more. You're free to move back again.
Yeah.
I do have one more thing. Since a family does live here, if you're going to go traipsing in and out of the woods, I probably wouldn't recommend it. It's going to be high wind advisory and rain. But if you're going to, please leave your shoes outside and then pick them up downstairs.
Yeah, there's a lot of dead ash in these woods, and I don't know if the wind's picked up. We're supposed to have 60-mile-an-hour winds,
Yeah.
but we lose
Lots of
ash
branches.
borers around here ate all our ash trees, so they drop routinely.
And even though we do have doctor-like people in the house,
So, okay.
I wouldn't push it.
What about
restrooms?
Yeah, anyone smoke? No smokers? Okay, if you do, please don't leave the butts on.